Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Zoom in 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, like it is every Tuesday night, and I am your host. We've been doing this for over 5 years, and look at that, the Zoom at 8 shirt. It is fantastic. I love it. You know, we've been doing this again for over 5 years, finding investors, helping you get the knowledge that you need, the network that is required, and the vendors that are so important in so many areas. And we welcome you every Tuesday night. Now, 3 weeks out of the month, we have industry experts, and tonight we have a couple of guys who will be talking to us about fraud that we're seeing in the marketplace in multifamily. So I'm excited about that. But if you're working on something and you are looking for a debt quote, that's where it starts, because we are your biggest partner. We're going to bring 60 to 80% of the money to the transaction. So the more leverage, the better the returns and the less money that you need to bring in equity. But if you are working on a deal, please, I'd love the opportunity to provide you a debt quote. I'm going to need your T12 rent roll, OM, and your underwriting, and we will get it to you in 48 hours. But I want to be really clear. You need to make sure you have an insurance broker quote. You can get that from JT Lynch over at Ramey King, or Aaron, or Jeff. And then you're going to make sure you have the taxes all lined up. What does the assessor say it's going to be? And then I want you to go and talk to a property manager. Make sure that they're vetting your assumptions. So you go ahead and get that all done, figure it out, put it in your underwriting, and make sure, does it still return? And that's when you pick up the phone and say, Julie, I really have something for you to look at. I want to put in an LOI. So 48 hours later, we'll get you that quote, get you some notes, some comments, and your underwriting, so you can see exactly how we're doing it. All right, so tonight we have 2 superstars that are going to be with us. One was not enough, so we got 2 of them. We've got Jamie Borodin, right? I said it correct. Did I say it right, Jamie?
You get a gold star for the day. That's a very tough name to get right, and very few people do. So Joey Ann gets the gold star for pronouncing the name correctly.
Well,
Congratulations, winner.
that goes to David. He helped me. I had to phonetically write it out. So Jamie Borodin is the president of Docuverus. Tonight we're going to talk about fraud. Okay, this is the first ever fraud detection and automated income and ID verification service. Prior to founding the Docuverus company, Jamie served as a vice president of operations for National Tenant Network. That's the NTN network. Okay. He was there since 2006, where he oversaw both operations and sales for the NTN. His vast experience with income and ID verification, document fraud, public court records, and both credit and rental scoring systems is his jam. So we're excited to meet Jamie, as well as David A. Williamson Jr. He is the Senior Vice President in Sales and New Business Development for Docuverus. With over 20 years of experience in sales and risk management solutions at Docuverus, he brings valuable expertise and leadership to their team. Previous to Docuverus, David held a significant role at RealPage Insurance Services, where he became renowned for his strategic insights and exceptional ability to drive sales and new business development. So all that to say is we've got 2 rock stars here tonight to talk to us about fraud. Fraud is running rampant. And the reason why I wanted Docuverus to come in tonight is because I personally use it on our deal in Houston. And my partner, Kimra, met up with David at NMHC, National Housing Council, back in January. And we were frustrated. We were getting hit on a daily basis with fraudulent applications. So when David met up with Kimra, it really lifted her ears to say, I am here to listen. And we have been nothing but just over the moon and excited about the success that it has given us on our project. Here's the best example is the first application that we ran with Docuverus, it came up as fraud. So I can't speak any more highly than that to protect us as a company, protect the other our assets, and obviously the other tenants. We want to make sure that we've got that really tight. So with that said, I want to introduce you to Jamie and David here from Docuverus. How are you guys?
Hi.
Doing fantastic. I'm on the East Coast. David and I are both East Coasters, by the way. Don't hold that against us. David is up in Rhode Island. I am in New Jersey. I've been up since 5:30, so it's about 8 o'clock Eastern. So I've had a long day, but I am so excited to be part of this panel tonight and excited to be able to share the story about Docuverus with you.
Absolutely.
I'm glad.
And it's great to be able to join you folks this evening. And that is a great story, Julie. When I met with Kimra, it was ironic how that happened because like many conferences in the multifamily space nowadays, there are so many sessions being held on fraud, the issue of fraud and how widespread it's become and the various solutions that are out there. And I actually just stumbled upon her. We sat down together at breakfast and I was asking her pretty much what she was looking to get out of this conference. And that was one of the things that she mentioned. She was really looking for a provider to work with that could help solve for fraud. And I said, give me 15 minutes. That's all I said to her. And we had a great meeting. She was a great lady, and now it ends up being a great business partnership. So we're very thankful and lucky for that.
Oh, that is a great and very honored to hear that. So, I can't believe it. I feel like when I got into this, many moons ago, 33 years ago, I was, running my own business. I never thought that we would be hitting fraud like it is today. I feel like there's a lot of operators that do not have this in their tool belt and they are getting hit with it. So I'm excited to learn more about the company and how the people here in the room can put this on their assets and bring it to their community of operators that they're involved with.
Absolutely. And what I can do, Jamie, if you'd like to, I just brought up a small deck that I can share with us this evening, just for sake of discussion points. What I can do, Jamie, is I'll provide the color commentary if you'd like to, get into a little bit more of how you started the company and how we ended up working together.
Yeah, sounds great. I've been in the industry, as Joy mentioned, since 2006 is when I came into multifamily. I had a lot of experience in software development, software sales in the healthcare industry before I ever came into multifamily. Came to work for a national tenant network, as Joy mentioned, and really grew that business substantially, became a true subject matter expert in credit, eviction histories, criminal background histories, overall risk management around how not only you get access to good information, but you assimilate that so that you can create recommendations around who to take and who not to take. So it was also around algorithms of acceptability. Grew that to a great degree over the years that I was there. About 5 or 6 years ago, I had more and more people coming to me saying, Jamie, these people are passing credit or they have no credit or marginal credit, but they have documents that look a little shady to me. And I want you to really take a look and see if you can help me figure out if these pay stubs are fake. And that was the real entree into this whole problem of fraud. And it was funny, as I started to get the first few people coming to me with these questions around documents, I started to see almost instantly that all of them were fake. And rarely did the people who were bringing them to me realize they were fake. They smelled something wrong, but they didn't have enough evidence to really determine that something was truly wrong. So as I got into it, I really thought, well, these are the markers on this one, and here's the markers on this one. And more importantly, how do we figure out a way to automate this so that there is a truly objective way to reliably determine whether a given document is real or fake? At the same time, I wanted to also solve the problem of verification because, again, the problem is not just determining is a given document a reliable document or a fraudulent document. It is also a problem of trying to figure out how much money somebody is really making. And when I looked at how most landlords and management companies were doing it, it was very much a problem of the leasing staff, where they had to not only look at the documents to try and play judge and jury around determining whether something was real or fake, they were also trying to manually read pay stubs. And what I really found that is that most of them just were giving up. They just didn't want to spend the time to really do the math to figure out what somebody was making. So if somebody put on their application, they were making $6,000 a month even, they would screen them with an assumption that they were truly earning $6,000 a month in income. And as I started getting into the problem of fraud, I also started to figure out the problem of calculation. And what I realized is rarely do people actually make round numbers. So when I looked at NTN and I looked at all the people that ran reports to us, and we were running literally 1,000 reports a day through our platform, I saw many, 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 many applications and many background reports with round numbers. So this person makes 6,000, this person makes 7,000, this person makes 8,000. And suffice it to say, when you do the math on pay stubs, rarely does somebody actually make a round number like that. In fact, it is categorically rare that somebody actually makes a round number. So it's less than 1% of people make a round number, yet around 25% of the applications I was running had a round number, which means that they were just assuming that what the applicant put on their application was a valid amount. So I also wanted to solve the problem of calculation. And so what we built was not just the most robust fraud detection platform, but also the only platform that can read document contents, which automates the process around verifying and calculating income. So what our system can do is not just determine whether a given pay stub is real or fake, but we can actually read the gross pay, the net pay. We can read the pay dates. We automatically can figure out pay frequency. We can determine whether pay stubs are the most recent, because obviously you don't just want to get pay stubs that are from 4 months ago. You want to make sure you have pay stubs that are current. You also want to make sure pay stubs are consecutive, because somebody might be an hourly based worker. Maybe they made a lot of money over the last 2 weeks, but the prior 2 weeks, maybe they didn't make a lot of money, and they might want to leave that pay stub out, knowing that if you actually were to consider that pay stub, it would result in a much lower income calculation. So what our system does is it actually looks to see if pay stubs are current, whether they're consecutive. We also allow you to set a look back. So it'll actually look back about how many weeks somebody has uploaded. And we don't go by number of documents. We actually go off of the pay frequency that is calculated from the actual pay stubs. So the moral of the story is it solves the problem of fraud, solves the problem of verification, and we also do ID verification as well. So it really is an all-encompassing way to solve the problem. And again, this is the other thing we realized, folks, that I didn't mention is the folks that were defaulting are not the folks that got caught during traditional screening. So our screening company was doing a good job weeding out the people with bad credit, weeding out people with evictions, weeding out people with criminal histories. The folks that were slipping through were the ones that falsified their social, falsified their identity, falsified their pay stubs. And that's what this system really now does. It closes that gap of vulnerability around folks that get in with fraudulent information. And again, when we looked at bad debt, most of the major bad debt cases were in fact caused by fraudsters. And it's funny when I look at a bad debt case now and somebody says to me, Jamie, move somebody in and they never paid from day one. And, in a state like California, a state like New Jersey, a state like New York, it can take 6 months to a year to get somebody out. So that can quickly turn into a 6 or 9 month, 12-month case that can result in tens, 20, 30, 40, even $60,000 of lost rent. When I saw those cases where they moved in and never paid a dime, there was a 90% probability there was fraud involved.
Yeah, one of the things that I find interesting is as widespread as a problem as this has become, there are still so many owners and managers that are either in denial or simply just don't believe fraud has impacted their portfolio. And the first thing I say to them is, well, how do you really know? How do you really know, right? And I'll challenge everybody on this call this evening, after we're done here, pick up your phone and Google fake pay stubs. Google fake bank statements, Google fake offer letters, and you will be amazed at what you'll find. Fraudsters are online. They're shamelessly promoting their services. And they're so tech savvy nowadays that they're able to produce these documents that, regardless of how diligent the site teams are at the various properties, they are not able to detect the most sophisticated levels of fraud with just the human eye. And to Jamie's point, and what's happening nowadays is, large organizations like the National Apartment Association or National Multi-Housing Council, they're actually conducting surveys and conducting studies now where owners and managers are now finding a direct correlation between an increase in bad debt and fraudulent activity. So again, it obviously existed before the pandemic. It's become so much more widespread since the pandemic. And to Jamie's point, there's so many different laws that have changed to benefit the tenant that it's that much more difficult to get them out of the unit. So on average, what we're seeing, the average eviction cost to be anywhere between $8,000 to $50,000, depending upon, again, how much loss of rent, any related expenses or fees that are associated with those evictions. But to Julie's point, it's not uncommon for us to catch fraud in week one when we launch a new relationship. And if we're able to keep one fraudster out of an apartment, how much can that actually save you in bad debt?
Absolutely. And David has an interesting slide up. When we first started this platform 3 years ago, we were really the only game in town we sort of pioneered the space around fraud detection, income verification, document reading software. And we talked to people, and again, to David's point, some people said to me, well, fraud's an issue? Is fraud actually a thing? And again, you don't know what you don't know. Now, when we talk to people, everybody knows fraud is an issue. The question now is, how do we really best solve the fraud? So, and that's what, again, we started in this space and we have grown to be the most accurate and reliable partner in this space at the same time. So it's really excited about what we provide. And again, we're trying to solve several problems, not just is this document reliable, but also, again, take away all the manual errors that are happening at the property. Because again, when we watch people try and calculate income, it was not a pretty sight. Most people just didn't, the leasing people weren't really well schooled on doing it. And let's face it, leasing people are incentivized largely to release units. They're not incentivized to keep people out. They're incentivized to get people in. And there is, again, that doesn't create an environment where they are incentivized to calculate income in the favor of the apartment building. They really sometimes do want to go off what the applicant thinks they're making, which is that higher amount of money because they can close that lease and get a move-in bonus. So again, we really wanted to be a whole encompass solution around not just fraud detection, but true verification at the same time.
Yeah, and what we found is aside, I'd say probably before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, the biggest problem out there with relation to fraud was the ID fraud. And I'm sure everybody on the call this evening has heard of a company called Checkpoint ID. And they used to be the only game in town, right? And it's a great company, but now there's so many other providers out there that provide that actually offer the ID verification. And nowadays, what's happening is not so much the ID fraud that's impacting the bad debt, but it's more over the document fraud. Again, how fraudsters are online promoting the fake pay stubs, the fake bank statements, the fake offer letters, the fake social security numbers. It's become so rampant that it's important to make sure that, when individuals decide to work with a provider, you have to make sure they're all inclusive, they're all comprehensive, because as this problem has grown, so too has the crowded space of different providers or different solutions out there. So it is important to do your homework. There are some great companies out there, and there are some companies that are completely different with regards to what they're actually solving for. Are they solving for ID fraud? Are they solving for simply income calculation? Or are they solving for document fraud? So very rarely, again, not to promote Docuverus, but we are one of the only companies out there that are pretty much all inclusive and all comprehensive with the ability to detect all types of fraud in addition to calculating income.
Yeah, and keep in mind, folks, when you are an applicant and you want to get into that apartment building, that is the crown of your jewel. That's the one you want to live in. You really rarely do you have to lie about who you are. That's not what you do. If you want to get out from bad credit, you don't need to lie about your identity. You need to basically come up with a fake social. So fake socials are the biggest way to get around bad credit. And certainly, if you're not making a lot of money and you want to qualify for that really nice apartment, all you have to do is falsify your income documents. And again, to David's point, if you just Google fake pay stub, you'll see that there are a multitude, a scary amount of fake producers out there that are more than happy to produce for a very little amount of money, convincing looking fake documents that will make
Yeah.
it make
And
whatever.
Jamie, I pulled this up thinking that maybe you might want to go through some of the various types of fraud. I think folks might find this interesting.
Yeah, and so again, when we look at the types of fraud that out there, there's really synthetic fraud, misuse of another person's documents, misuse of genuine payroll service, counterfeit documents, and edited documents. Synthetic fraud is, again, pretending that you're somebody else. So if you want to, let's say Julianne Peterson, I know she has fantastic credit, and I want to be able to apply as Julianne because I know that if I apply as Julianne, I'm going to come back with a great credit rating and they're just going to believe me and everything's going to be hunky-dory. So all I have to do is come up with documents that say that I'm Julianne Peterson. And if I can pull that off and you run my credit with Julie's real name, Julie's real date of birth, Julie's real social, Julianne's real address, you're going to get qualified in most cases because Julianne truly has a great background. But again, that's one way to do it. That's actually one of the more rare forms of fraud because it actually does take a little more work. You got to get a fake ID. You have to do some more extra diligence to pull that off. The other way you can do it is you can misuse another person's documents. So if I can just use David's documents, David makes a lot of money. Let's say David makes $100,000 a year. I'm only making $20,000 a year, and I want to be able to get into that shiny apartment. All I have to do is take David's documents, change the name on David's documents to Jamie and Jamie's address, and suddenly I have David's income. And to do that, by the way, it takes about 5 minutes to work with any form of PDF editing software. So if you have Adobe Acrobat Pro used to be something you had to buy for $500 or $600 license for the year. Now you can subscribe to it for $8 a month. And if you're a fraudster, you just have to spend $8 and you can get access to Adobe Acrobat Pro. And with Adobe Acrobat Pro, you can take any PDF and you can edit it to your heart's content. And that's how easy it is to make it, use somebody else's documents to make them appear that they are yours. The other thing I can do, by the way, is again, some providers will validate documents, but they can't read the content. So again, if I have a brother named John, I'm Jamie, and John, my brother John makes a lot of money, and I apply as John. I'm hoping the leasing agent doesn't really notice that it's not Jamie's name, it's John's name. John's documents are completely kosher, completely legitimate, totally verified. As long as if you don't pick up on the fact that it's John, not Jamie, you are now thinking that John's income is Jamie's income. Again, that'll pass a lot of different providers out there, but it won't pass Docuverus because Docuverus reads the name on the pay stubs to make sure the pay stubs in fact belong to your applicant. They share the same name. And if they don't, our system automatically flags that as well as a name mismatch. So that way you're not going to fall victim to that. Misuse of another, again, just to wrap up that, again, the different types of fraud. But again, if you have bad credit, you don't need to lie about who you are. You just need to lie about your social. And there are many bad actors out there that will sell what's called a CPN, a consumer privacy number. That is a number that looks like a social, smells like a social, but it's not a real social. But what will happen is if you apply under that social, the bad actors will tie you to somebody's legitimate credit. You will come back with a good credit history on the basis of somebody else's trade lines. So
How
that's
often does that happen, Jamie, that somebody gets a hold of my information and is using it or your information?
So in the case of true identity theft, that is relatively rare because, again, you have to go through a lot of work to be able to get a fake ID and all the other stuff. CPNs are a little bit different. So what I can do, Julianne, is if there are bad actors out there that know that Julianne Peterson has legitimately good credit and has a credit card that I can match onto. And what they will do is they will establish a credit file for me for about $100. They'll create this CPN that is tied to Jamie Borodin. What they'll do is they'll tie that social and they'll make they'll make Jamie Borodin an authorized user under Julianne's credit card. So what that does is it means when you run my new credit using that CPN, I'm going to actually show that I have credit. It's not my own credit. It's Julianne's credit because I'm an authorized user on her credit card. I then get the benefit of Julianne's good payment history on that credit card. So that's what the CPN providers do. And what you'll find is that when this happens, you'll take somebody, usually somebody like, let's say 25, 30, 40 years old, and they will have a credit file that is newly established. So you look at their credit report and it'll say that that credit file was established in 2024. And you'll say to yourself, why does David Williamson, who is older than he would ever want to admit on this channel, why does he have a credit file that was just established in 2024? Theoretically speaking, David should have a credit file that goes back to 1980 or something like that, right?
Sure.
He should not have a brand new credit file. That is one of the ways you can tell when people are doing this. New credit files are a good way to do it. Now, the good thing is when they do this, regardless of how you catch it, invariably they're faking their pay stubs as well. And if you have a solution like Docuverus, we're always going to catch the fake pay stubs. And we actually will check social security cards. You upload a social. Again, in all those cases where they are using CPNs, they have to fabricate that social security card. We can also tell that the social security card in many cases has been fabricated as well.
Yeah, and as we've been discussing, it's pretty rampant on social media how they promote their services, and they get pretty creative too. We've actually had some of our clients send us fraudulent menus, as they would be called, where a resident could select from, would you like option A, option B, or option C? And it's a matter of, would you like just the fake ID, or would you like the package deal with the fake the fake bank statement? So it's just incredible how they're getting away with this. And they're the most basic and most rudimentary forms of fraud Jamie mentioned earlier. That's when a resident would purchase the PDF filler or purchase the Adobe Pro themselves. And that's very basic. And if site teams had the time, energy, and effort, they may be able to catch some of the modifications made to those documents. But the most sophisticated levels of fraud, it's so difficult to catch, because we'll get into in a moment. But what these fraudsters are doing is actually changing the metadata to these documents. And the metadata is what we call the electronic fingerprint that's actually intrinsic to the document. So they're making changes to this metadata and replacing it. So there's no way that you would be able to pick up those changes with just the human eye. And that's where something like our platform comes into play, which we'll show you in a moment.
Yeah, and we always tell the story. We had one management company that found us on TikTok, and there was a TikToker out there explaining to people how she can get you approved at various apartments with fake documents. And she mentioned as part of her little spiel, by the way, I can get you past this fraud detection company. So if you need to get past fraud detection company A, we have documents that will beat them. But she said in her little TikTok video, don't use Docuverus. They're the ones we can't beat.
Isn't that interesting?
And sure enough, that company signed up with us, and they are very happy they did, because they were using a different fraud detection service. They did fall victim to fraud that the other company missed. And they came to us, and we actually showed them a couple of the cases that the other company had passed that we found truly had been fake documents that we would have caught on the front end.
Interesting. So there's a question. What about using EIN numbers for rental applications?
EINs, you can pull it off sometimes. The EINs, the problem with EINs are the same problem you have with CPNs. You have to tie it to something. Now the issue is, if you apply using an EIN, that EIN doesn't belong to anybody. Let's assume that it's not a social that actually belongs to anybody. What'll happen is you're going to come back with no credit, not an established credit file. You'll come back with a brand new credit report. Now, for a lot of apartment communities, no credit is acceptable credit. So again, that might be enough to pull it off. But again, you can escape bad credit. The way in which you need to escape bad credit is you don't want to use your real social. You use your real social, the credit bureau is going to match you to your actual credit file. If you apply with a fake social, and just so you know, guys, the way in which credit reports get matched by TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian are based on three pieces of information: your name, your social, and your address. Okay, by the way, date of birth doesn't matter for credit report matching. It's name, it's social, it's address. You have to generally get two out of those three pieces of information right for the credit bureau to match you to your file. So if you apply with the wrong social, but you get the address 100% matching and you get the name 100% matching, you'll generally pull the right credit file regardless. Issue is if you get the address even a little bit wrong, or you use a false address and you use that fake social, you're going to come back with a brand new credit file because TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax aren't going to be able to match you to your right credit file. They will then say we have a no credit hit here. Somebody that does not have a credit file with us, this is a brand new credit file effective today. So that person comes back with no credit. And what do most apartment communities say? No credit isn't bad credit. It's enough to move in. Maybe conditionally, but not enough to deny you.
Interesting. That is amazing information. How many, I know you're fairly new to this with Docuverus, this platform, getting it out to everybody. What has over the last year, how many of the property management companies have you seen are using fraud? They're experiencing it, right? What do? We don't know. How many are now starting to engage companies like yours? Is it 50%? Is it 90%? What do you see?
It's funny, 3 or 4 years ago, when we would come into a management company and talk about fraud, they would say fraud's an issue. Like I said, is this a new thing? Didn't really know that fraud was really something out there. As David kind of pointed to at the beginning of this presentation, pretty much 92% of management companies surveyed know that fraud's an issue. Only about 10 or 20% of them are actually using some form of solution. So still today, when we talk to management companies, we will often find management companies still, they recognize the fraud's out there, but they really haven't yet adopted a solution. So it's more common that people haven't adopted a solution than have actually adopted a solution out there.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I will tell you that even in as short a period of time as the last 12 months, now with everybody focusing on budget, because we're in budget season, we have had so many conversations and so many demos because they're actually making a fraud solution one of their initiatives going into Q1 of 2025. They're looking to see what they need to do to budget for a product or a solution like this, when in effect, the solution pays for itself. Again, if you catch one or two frauds, what does the average eviction cost you? But we're finding that there is a seat at every single table right now with regards to the discussions of budgeting and going into next year and what some of their initiatives are for 2025. And fraud is definitely on the forefront of that.
Yeah, and go ahead, Joanne.
I was going to say, I loved what your post was, I think at the beginning of 2024, David. It said, budget for less bad debt in 2024. I thought that was fantastic because it's so simple to think about it, but let's do something about it.
Yeah.
So I love that quote.
It is funny. Jamie and
Some people say to us, well, I got a budget for a fraud solution. We've never used anything like this. We never had a budget. And our feedback is, if we just catch one for you in a month, that's going to reduce your bad debt to a degree that's going to pay for the service about 20 times over. So you don't need to really budget for it. You just need to budget for less bad debt, because the less bad debt that we're going to produce for you is going to pay for the service many times over. And again, as you found out, Julianne, the very first person you ran through the platform is somebody we caught. Had that person slipped through, there is an over 85% probability they wouldn't have paid rent. And again, you have to think to yourself, what would that person have cost me had they gotten into the unit?
And Jamie, how about that client out of Philadelphia? That he has a great story with how he reduced his bad debt.
Oh God, I met with this group out of Philadelphia. They specialize in renovating historic landmarks. So what they do is they take old buildings and they convert those into apartment complexes. So in one case, they had an old car manufacturing plant where they made Packard cars, and they turned that into an apartment complex as one example of their buildings, really neat kind of buildings. Long story short, getting into the meat of it, they had a woman that he told me moved in, and she never paid really a dime in rent from the time she moved in. She also moved in with a very large dog that proceeded to defecate throughout the entire common area. She really never thought to herself, well, why would I take this dog out? I can just let the dog, I don't really care about this place. I'm not going to pay rent. So she let the dog defecate all.
Ah,
The dog did so much damage with urine and feces all throughout the apartment that the apartment building that they literally had to replace the entire carpet. Well, because this is an historic landmark building, they couldn't just replace it with carpet. They had to get historically correct carpet. Moral of the story is that bad debt case, they had in order to replace the common area carpets, it was a $60,000 bill to replace the common area carpets. Between the lost rent, between the damage to the apartment, the 6 months of lost rent, it took her 6 months to get that person out of the unit. The damage to the apartment, it was a $100,000 bad debt case.
that will make you
Sure
sick.
enough, we ran it through Docuverus. We ran the documents through. Fake is a $3 bill.
So I
That
think
is insane.
I think for sake of time, Jamie, if we want to, maybe we could just hit some of the differentiators here real quickly in regards to what actually the software does, because this really is the key to how we catch the most sophisticated levels of fraud.
Absolutely. And again, I am very much a perfectionist, guys. I've been in the industry a long time. And I know
You're kind of going in and out a little.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
In there.
that people will get property.
So Jamie, you're kind of going in and
Oh
out.
God, hopefully my internet.
That's okay. So,
Hello?
folks, I think first and foremost, again, for the sake of time, I know Julie had mentioned that we have a stop.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
So we are one of the only providers in this space, folks, where we created our own software. We built our software from the ground up. A lot of the other providers that are in this space are actually resellers of other solutions, other software providers that are out there. So the biggest differentiator is that we built our own platform from the ground up, and we analyze documents through what we call a multi-dimensional metadata analysis. We're actually able to take a deep dive into these documents, and we can identify any metadata that has been scrubbed, altered, changed, modified. And again, to my earlier point, this is what the fraudsters are doing online now. So we can pick up the changes made to this metadata with a 99.98% accuracy, which is the highest in the industry. And we also are one of the only providers where we don't just validate and authenticate documents, but to Jamie's earlier point, we actually read document content. So when a pay stub gets uploaded to our platform, we're actually able to tell the pay start dates, the pay end dates, whether the pay stubs are current, whether they're consecutive, whether they meet your look back period. And I know this may sound very rudimentary as well, but we're actually able to match the applicant's name on the pay stubs to your application. So a lot of other providers can't do that because they can't read document content. And one of the biggest things that we usually catch is something where we're actually able to identify fraudulent timestamps. Like, for example, a pay start date could say October 1st, but our platform would pick up when that document was created. Was it made back in April? Was it made back in May? And that's more often than not one of the common types of fraud that we find is with the fraudulent timestamps on the document. And then finally, because of our direct reading logic software and our engine we built in, we're able to auto-calculate gross income down to the penny. So Jamie spent some time earlier talking about how there are a lot of manual and human errors made with calculating income, but our platform actually calculates income down to the penny when the pay stubs are uploaded to our platform. So all of that is all inclusive in the platform. And then I like to say the frosting on the cake is our ID verification, is our IDV. So I'm sorry to jump in and steal your thunder, Jamie. I just, for sake of time, I wanted to make sure we're able to get through that.
Yeah, can you guys hear me, by the way?
We
Yes.
can now, yep.
All right, sorry about that. I have a little bit of wonky internet. It had improved for a while, but you never know what's going to rear its ugly head. But again, we spent a lot of time to really build a very robust platform. We built what is arguably the most sophisticated fraud detection algorithms in the industry. And again, some of the fraudsters know how to beat some of the less sophisticated fraud detection platforms out there. We built a truly robust model. We're actually looking several layers into the metadata. We can detect forms of fraud that would evade most other services. And again, even those basic forms of fraud, taking David's real documents, hoping the leasing agent doesn't notice that my name isn't on those documents. We can catch that because we're one of the only services that can read the name on the pay stubs and the bank statements at the same time.
So can you kind of walk us through if somebody wants to get a subscription, I guess is what it is, a license? How does that work? How kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, David, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so actually it's pretty convenient. So it's a subscription-based platform, right? Where you'd pay per unit per month for as many applications as you'd like to run. It starts at about $1.60 per month, and we actually have price breaks. Once you reach 1,000 units, it would drop by 10 cents, 2,000 units, another 10 cents. So depending upon the size of a portfolio, you can get down to a pretty inexpensive price at around $1.50 per unit per month. And there's three very basic ways where residents are invited to upload documents. First and foremost, we provide each one of our customers with a community-specific URL, a property-specific URL that you want to embed into your online application. So whatever PMS it is, whether it's Yardi, whether it's OneSite, or again, there's so many players in that space, we want, after the application process, you drop the hyperlink, and there the resident is invited to upload their documents. Now, depending upon how the site teams like the workflow to be, they can also text the resident an invite to the platform. They can email the resident an invite to the platform. Or one of the biggest concerns we get is that, hey, my residents are not tech savvy. And if that's the case, you can actually upload the documents for the residents themselves. So primarily, it's the URL link that's embedded into the online application. And we actually turn around results as little as 15 minutes, or it can take up to 3 hours. It just depends upon, again, how busy we are, what time of day it is, how many applications are being run, but as little as 15 minutes for up to 3 hours.
And it takes how long to do?
It is little as 15 minutes. The property will get
15
an email
minutes.
back with the results, or up to 3 hours.
Okay, so sorry, you said that. I was taking a note here.
That's okay.
So you get the information back. How do you disseminate that information to the client? Are they told by the property management company, or is it Docuverus that then communicates directly with the applicant that says, no, that's not going to work, or the property manager has to go back and says, yeah, no, and here's why.
That's a great point. And one of the things that we believe is one of our biggest differentiators is our live US-based customer service reps. They are there not only for the site staff, but more importantly for the residents. So if the residents have questions on how do I upload my pay stub, how do I upload my bank statement, or more importantly, if the residents disagree with our results, we never want to put somebody in that uncomfortable position of ever calling anybody a fraudster, and we don't recommend it. We actually suggest rental criteria language that you would add to your rental criteria that would explain you work with a third-party verification platform to help verify and validate documents. And if in fact we found documents to be invalid, then that's exactly how we train the site teams. Let them know a third-party provider, Docuverus, they're the ones that found the documents invalid. Please feel free to call them. So they would call our customer service staff. If they want to challenge the results, they're more than happy to do so. They can send us some additional pay stubs. They can send us some additional bank statements. But I will tell you, more often than not, when we find documents to be fraudulent, we do not hear from the resident again. Again, because our platform, we're able to validate and invalidate documents with a 99.98% accuracy.
And again, David's point, we don't want you calling people a fraudster, and we don't ever say to you people, hey, you're done. You want to come back, if you feel you're absolutely right. And by the way, we can tell when they're fake, but if you really feel like you want to prove your case, come back with bank statements. 99% of the time when they do come back with bank statements turn out to be fake as well. Rarely that bank statements will turn out to be valid, but guess what will happen? The net pay amounts will be demonstrably lower than what the deposit amounts will be demonstrably lower than the net pay amounts on the pay stubs. And that is a good example that they actually did fabricate their documents to make it appear they were making more than they actually are.
Very, very interesting. I mean, I think that we did have an issue where we had gotten all of the documentation and we thought it was fraudulent. And we were saying, no, 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 this is before we had you guys working with us. And it actually was military, and it was actually real documentation. So it put us in a bad situation with the applicant. In fact, the applicant was so angry, she put it all over the internet that, we basically harassed her, which we didn't harass her, but we, really did some due diligence. And the military, we've done so many checks. We know what they look like. This one didn't look like it. So, if you can have this third party that is separate from you, and you just say, hey, this, let's go and have you speak with them, it really takes a lot of the energy away from the site staff. I love that. Now, before you say you're done here, because we're not done, I have a question for you. Are you seeing this fraud in any particular class more so on B, C, A? What do you got?
It's funny,
Question all the time. Jamie, you can answer it. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, some people, I mean, certainly there is a higher degree of fraud, perhaps among C class properties and B class properties than among A class properties. But when you factor the rent amounts in A class properties relative to C class properties or B class properties, the impact of fraud tends to be so much greater just because of the financial harm that one person can do in that A-class community, that if you just waited a few more days, you would have rented to somebody truly honest who would have paid the rent. That is a major mistake that you can avoid. So definitely there's less fraud, but we have a lot of people who use us who have entirely A-class communities, and sometimes they'll be, we really don't know if we're going to get fraud. They always get fraud. There is not a market in the country where there is a zero fraud.
Right, and we're actually finding lease ups to be a targeted property now. So that's been running rampant as well. And it's like ants on a breadcrumb, if you will, where we know residents talk amongst themselves, and as soon as one person gets in the unit, it's amazing how it travels like wildfire.
Yeah, there was a ring. We had one management company in Baltimore. They signed up their Baltimore community first, and it was amazing. Everybody they ran was fake, and I'm like, wow, what is happening here? Why are there so many fakes? And sure enough, the management company told me, well, Jamie, there is a ring. There's an ad on Facebook that was guaranteeing people they will get them into our unit. And so they were advertising, we will get you approved at X apartments. We know how to get you approved. And that spread like wildfire. They became the target because they knew that they could get people in there.
Wow. So are you seeing it in major metros, this fraud? Are you seeing it in the South? Where are you seeing the majority of it coming from? Is there certain states? Are there certain regions? What do you see?
Yeah. So again, fraud happens everywhere. There is not a market in the country where fraud is zero. Some markets are 4 to 5% fraud. Some markets are up to 20. I'm going to tell you the highest percentage in the country is Texas. So Texas is, they always say it's go big or go home. Certainly that's the way it is in Texas. Houston probably is the #1 market for fraud across the country. Atlanta is a very high fraud market. Philadelphia is a big high fraud market.
Florida. Yeah.
Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, big fraud markets as well. Southeast, South United States, California, Los Angeles market, San Francisco market, big areas for fraud as well. So there are nobody that is immune.
Amazing.
And there are definitely some pockets where it is extraordinarily high. We have some complexes in Houston. 1 out of every 4 people is fake.
That is insane.
Fraud rates.
So here's if we talk about what this means to the expense side for us, our property is 134 units. It costs us $210 a month to protect us. I think that is nothing. And it is protecting us from bringing in, we want to keep, putting applications out there. It is protecting us from all of this. So I am just so thrilled. Now, I have one last question before we open it up. how can we get the emotional support animal to be part of this fraud behavior, or look at it? Is there anything that you guys are finding that we could pluck that out and say that is BS?
It's sort of like Viagra. It's like one of those things that there's a huge demand for it. People want to do it, and there's many doctors that will be happy to write a script for you. Many doctors, many vets were happy to basically say that this animal is an emotional support animal. If the vet says it's an emotional support animal, who are you to argue? So it's one of those. It is a problem in need of a solution, but it's a problem that
Yeah.
is intractably hard to solve, given that it's hard to argue with the vet that is saying, yeah, this is an emotional support animal.
I am thinking positively that you guys found a solution for this on the fraud, and I am hoping that you find something with the emotional support animal. I have my own experiences as an owner operator, and it's been frustrating. So I'm looking forward to the day I bring you back and you say, we have something for you. So, all right, let's open it up. Make sure that everybody makes note here. This is how you can get a hold of Jamie or with David for asking further questions. If this was something that resonated for you, let's get them on the phone. Docuverus is an excellent product. I can only tell you the positive sides that has helped me with our bad fraud. So I'm opening it up. Is there anybody in the room that has a question? All right. Maybe you're looking for the mute button. All right. I think you guys did an amazing job unpacking that. I'm thoroughly impressed with the product, knowing how you guys have saved us. So I appreciate you guys taking the time out. And if there's any updates to this, we'd love to have you come back. It's phenomenal. Really.
Thank you much.
Thank you very much. It was great being a part of the group, and thank you very much for having us.